Now it is recording. I always want to do that before you. I've had it happen once or twice where you're 3 minutes into the podcast. And you're like, wait a minute, we have to do that again.
Yep.
Yikes.
It's never happened before.
I think
I sh
I
Not to
can
me either.
specifically say when that happened was after hours for the Time Enough podcast. And I was like kind of halfway through a trivia. I was like, wait a minute. I caught that. And then there's the two podcasts where I did forget to hit the record button, and that was with the same person. So I think I hopefully didn't offend him too hard. Yeah, Mike, this is what I guess we don't have that much of a full format.
I listened to the first one just to get a feel for it.
Okay, yeah, that's
So I
only one out
listen,
so far.
yeah.
So
So okay, I wasn't sure about that because that was a couple of weeks ago, I thought, or the
Yeah.
18th, maybe. I guess it
yeah,
was.
we're ahead again. I'm putting
Good.
that while we're doing the movies. I'm putting them out like bi-weekly just so we can chill out a little bit. And then the show has 14 episodes, and that I did confirm that's correct. And I think the animated one's 13. So uh,
Okay.
Yeah.
we don't know if we're going to regret having chosen to do the show or not. We'll get back to you on that.
It wouldn't
you
hurt
still
to do
need it?
14 episodes.
I didn't know if I got plucked out of my place on the pilot of the series. to
Oh,
do
you
that.
can come back for
But
that if
either
you
way,
want.
You can come back for
That's
that if you want, but
You can come back for that if you want, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's I this is fun for me.
Cool. No, glad to have you. I mean, I've asked a friend of mine if they wanted to do one of the episodes of the show, and they're just like, no.
Hey, if you don't want to, that's great.
All right.
Be direct about it. That's fine. But yeah,
It's better than asking for something and then it being like
And then
coming
being
back
turned
and
down.
coming back and be like, oh, does that mean I have to watch the thing? Oh, I don't know if I could. I literally got this from somebody. Anyway, patrons. I'm not going to name the person. Nobody in the Patreon knows who I'm talking about. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's like,
but yeah,
you do have to watch the thing, please.
You can
I'm
watch
reading
the
like
show.
our first 10 lines of notes, and they're like almost identical.
I didn't take many notes because I kind of got sucked into this movie. I don't know.
Well, so I watched it once with my wife and daughter yesterday. I talked them into watching it with me. And my daughter, the college senior, was really taken back by all the social commentary that I'm sure we'll get to. But yeah, we ate it up. But I just watched it, and I probably haven't seen this movie in 2, maybe 3 years. But yeah, I was man, I love this movie.
Okay. Well, Mark, I guess intro us up, and we'll start talking about it properly.
All right, just 1 second. I'm just finishing off the trivia, which putting something that I forgot to put in.
Yeah.
Done. It's just one thing at the end. Okay. Welcome to Podcast 1999, the podcast about apes and the planets of them.
The monkey planets.
Yes.
Don't say monkey.
No,
that offends us.
That's a slur. Get out of here.
That's the British name of the book, yo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was fully coming. Yeah, you can get killed with a tray if you use that word improperly.
It was an accident.
A wild accident, but hey, accidents can be wild,
accident.
Yeah. Hi, this is Matt here as always.
It's Mark here, also
Mark.
as always.
Coming back as sometimes is Mike Richards from the Mission Log, the Orville podcast. How is it?
Hey guys, thanks for having us back. Yeah, the Orville and Mission Log the Orville and Talking Ted, and maybe some other things. And Jessica and I are getting ready to do a 4-part giveaway by Master Replicas. They're gonna give away everything they have made of the Orville, most of which you can see right there if you're on video.
Nice.
I got to squint a little, but that's how the internet works or Zoom works.
Right.
So yeah, we decided to escape from the planet of the apes. As I was about to get on that line, I was like, the movie should just be called Escape, but you make the A big as well, so it's Escape.
Escape.
I see what you did there.
No, the title's fine. We don't have to change it. That just occurred to me, so I thought I'd just spit it out while I can.
It's a funny title because the escape from the Planet of the Apes happens entirely off screen.
Yeah, well, the budgets are getting smaller as these movies go along.
Yeah,
Unless you consider that it is the Planet of the Apes, in which case they never escaped.
Hmm.
Or maybe the only escape is death.
It is, and even I mean, I remember watching this movie on TV when it premiered. So, and I think I just looked it up. It premiered like in 1973. And I think one of the networks did a thing where they showed the first three like at monthly intervals. And I remember like all gathered around the TV to watch this movie. And I'm thinking, no, like no, that ship sunk. And James Francisco says that one burned up. Like, no, like where'd they get the they don't even have a booster. Like, how can they do this? This doesn't make sense. But I just went with it because, whatever.
Dr.
It's cool.
Milo is a genius, except
He's a
for standing
genius.
in cages. Was not a genius for standing in cages.
Oh no, no, Salminio.
Oh no.
Um, yeah, for me, actually, I saw the first two movies like ad infinitum as a child, but I never saw the other three movies until about 10 or 12 years ago when I was just, bopping by the local bookstore where they were selling Blu-rays, and then I
Oh
decided to do
wow.
do my apes properly. I've now seen it probably this is probably the fourth time I've watched it because I'm a regular viewer of the series. But yeah,
Yeah.
Mark and I are a little younger, so they weren't doing like the apathons that I think they were doing in the late 70s because at that point they'd even packaged the TV show into like three or four more movies that they could
Right.
show and have like
Yes.
full on
So
Apes Week.
so one of the things that I remember my dad taking me to see it in the movies. Now, clearly that did not happen in 1968 because I would have been one or zero. Um, but I would have been around, and then it was pretty common to like sort of re-release films into movie theaters every several years. And so I do remember seeing that. And I do remember the only other first run ape movie that I saw, because I would have been 5 or 6, was when Battle for the Planet of the Apes premiered. And I do distinctly remember seeing that in a movie theater. The rest of them I caught on TV when I could, which, like I said, I remember, seeing that run of ape films up through the first three anyway when they came out. And it's but these things have been around my whole life, man. I mean, I've been reared on these films.
This this is the first time I've watched it all the way through actually. I'd seen parts of it on TV at some point to the point where I definitely remember some of the things that I think I saw a good half of it. And I was like, "Oh, this is fun." I kind of get that. It was one of those things that sometimes you watch something on TV and you don't necessarily have time to watch all of it, or you have to go do something because TV is a bad model, and it's much better to be able to watch things whenever you want, like
Yeah.
we can now. But anyway, don't think this ever aired much on TV, if at all, when I was a child. This was definitely solidly in adulthood when I watched the parts of it. But
Yeah, I know
um,
Atlanta TV, the first two were playing on a loop on Channel 17, but they didn't play this one so much.
the first one for sure, like a lot. No, but I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a both a good sequel and a good movie,
Right
and
on.
it kind of feels like it shouldn't work, but it works really well, and that's a great trick.
That's kind of the charm of the franchise in general, I guess, because they didn't know what they were doing, really. I mean, like literally,
Yeah,
people didn't do franchises yet, so it's like the proto franchise.
I mean
Yeah.
the reboot one just didn't seem like it should work, and it did. You know what I mean?
It
At least
grabbed me.
twice.
Yeah, it grabbed me right away. I mean, just from that just that soundtrack, man, that funky soundtrack. I mean, a couple of years ago, I don't know what was going on. I think it was just wintertime. I didn't want to go outside. And one of the streaming services had all 5 of these films going, and I watched them all in a day. And at that point, that was the last time I watched Escape, and it was kind of a nice surprise because I was like, this movie is flipping cool and it's good. And well, I'm sure we'll get into other things, but it's got really existential names of characters. When you look down the cast, you have the commissioner, the president, the marine. It's kind of cool that way, but they all play really cool roles and they all have their parts of sort of reflecting, American life back at us.
Yep, and man, great dialogue. Like surprisingly good dialogue. Good dialogue for any era.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
like
Yeah.
I wrote the Wyndham of Wisdom there. I wrote that somewhere in there during the
This-
president talking to the Nazi. Can we call him the Nazi? I guess he's technically not a Nazi.
he
You
played
know,
a bunch of Nazis.
I just think it was really
Ostine.
far-fetched to have
Yes.
a German science advisor to the president. I mean, who comes up with this stuff?
That's for Disney movies or TV shows. Mark, you got some trivia for us, I assume?
Yes, I do. In 1970, while Beneath the Planet of the Apes was in the middle of its clearly successful theatrical run, producer Arthur P. Jacobs sent a telegram to writer Paul Dane that simply stated, quote, "Apes exist, comma, sequel required." Dane's early script involved Cornelius and Zira going back in time with a Leonardo da Vinci type ape in a script titled Secret of the Planet of the Apes, and it accommodated for an even smaller budget by having very few humanoid apes in the story. That's right, the budget is now at $2 million. If you're not keeping track, Beneath the Planet of the Apes had a $2.5 million budget, and the original was at $5.8 million. These films made 19 and 33.3 million respectively. This third film made 12.3 million. Wow, it's almost like the less you invest, the less money it makes. How about
returns and investments.
Diminishing investments, diminishing returns. Well, I hope somebody figured that out eventually. I guess you also can't spend 300 million on your film. Anyway, the humor and intimacy of the script attracted director Don Taylor, who is directing a Planet of the Apes film for the first and last time here. Born in Pennsylvania in 1920, Taylor studied drama and speech at Penn State and hitchhiked to Hollywood in 1942. He worked as an actor before and after he was drafted into World War II, where he served in the United States Air Force. Some of his acting roles in the 50s include starring opposite Elizabeth Taylor in Father of the Bride and appearing as Lieutenant Dunbar in Billy Wilder's Stalag 17. Did I say that right? Stalag.
I think it's
His
Stalag.
acting Stalag. His acting credits tapered off by the early 60s, but his directing career, which began in the late 50s, overtook it, and he ended up with over 100 TV and film credits before his retirement in the late 80s. Those would include 2 episodes of Night Gallery, Damien, Omen 2, and The Final Countdown. He passed away in 1998 from heart failure at the age of 78. Paul Dane shares a writing credit on this film with Pierre Boulle, whom he consulted to help him incorporate some satiric elements into the script. If you don't recall, Pierre Boulle wrote the original book that the first film was based on. Jerry Goldsmith is back as composer of the soundtrack, contributing a very different score from the first film, but in my opinion, equally good. He will get a credit for stock music used in the next film, but this is his final full original score for a Planet of the Apes film. Roddy McDowall is back as Cornelius, and Kim Hunter is back as Zira. He will appear in the future as other characters in the franchise, but she will not. By all accounts, she was glad that her character was killed off, but she did prefer the script for this film to the one from Beneath. Our new ape, the ill-fated Dr. Milo, was played by Sal Mineo. Born in 1939 in the Bronx, New York, to Sicilian immigrants, he was thrown out of school and as a child was a member of a street gang by age 8. His mother enrolled him in dancing school, and after being arrested for a robbery at age 10, he was given a choice between acting school or juvenile confinement. The acting school worked out for him. He played the young prince in The King and I opposite Yul Brynner and racked up 2 Best Supporting Actor Oscar nominations for Rebel Without a Cause and Exodus. He took the role in this film because he was hoping for a revitalization of his acting career like the first film did for Charlton Heston, but unfortunately he wouldn't live much longer after the film's release. In 1976, he was murdered by a 17-year-old mugger named Lionel Ray Williams, who did not know who he was and was only interested in the money that Mineo had on him. A grim reflection of his early life. Mineo was only 37. Under the trademark section in his IMDb, it only states, played characters who rarely survived the film. Dr. Stephanie Branton is played by Natalie Trundy, who you may remember from the previous film as Albina. She'll be back the next 2 films as a different character, but the same character in both of those films. Bradford Dillman appears as Dr. Lewis Dixon, born in 1930 in San Francisco. Hey, he graduated with a degree in English literature and served in Korea, not World War II like everyone else. In the trivia, it usually does. He has over 140 acting credits and often played clean-cut, white-collar characters with something to hide. Most of his roles were in television, but his film roles were Not generally in successful pictures, but he did appear in the film Piranha as well as an episode of Night Gallery. His last on-screen credits were in 8 episodes of Murder, She Wrote as 8 different characters. He retired. I don't think that was supposed to be a multiple personality situation, but I'd like to believe it was. He retired from acting in the late 80s and found success as an author late in life. His books included a memoir titled Are You Somebody? An Actor's Life. He passed away in 2018 at the age of 87 from complications of pneumonia. Eric Braeden was born Hans Gudegast in Kiel, Germany during World War II. He emigrated to the U.S. as a teenager and soon had a career playing Nazis on screen. And in this film, he plays the evil Dr. Otto Haslein, who is name dropped briefly in the first 2 films, which I did not notice. Braden later admitted that he didn't really like this role and thought it was a caricature, but he enjoyed working on the film nonetheless. He's enjoyed a long career overall that has extended into this year, 2024. He appeared in Kolchak the Night Stalker, $6 Million Man. Hey, he was also in Piranha, and has appeared in a staggering 4,233 episodes of The Young and the Restless, and has several soap opera award wins and nominations under his belt from that run. It's a small role, but a pivotal. I try to sound smart, and I say pivotal. It's a small role, but a pivotal one that may or may not doom humanity. And one of our most recognizable actors here is Ricardo Montalban as Armando. He was born in 1920 in Mexico City, the youngest of 4 children to Castilian Spanish immigrants. He moved to LA as a teen and lived with his older brother, who himself was pursuing an acting career. He was noticed in a student play, but passed on a screen test that was offered, instead moving to New York with his brother, where he appeared on stage, and then moving back to Mexico to care for his sick mother. While he was there, he broke into the Spanish-language film industry and was scouted by MGM, who had him move back to Los Angeles to star in Too Many Films to Mention in the 40s and 50s. He did feel pigeonholed as a Latin lover stereotype, but later his career had a long second wind on mostly television roles that led to his appearance on Star Trek as Khan. And in turn, that character gave that franchise its own second wind in the 80s as a film franchise. Yes, there was a movie before that, but that is pre-Second Wind. His nearly 70-year career included other highlights, such as 7 seasons of Fantasy Island, The Naked Gun from the Files of Police Squad, Spy Kids 2 and 3, and a personal favorite of mine, 5 episodes of Freakazoid as the voice of main antagonist Armando Gutierrez. He passed away in 2009 at the age of 88 from congestive heart failure, and all I can say to congestive heart failure is, from hell's heart I stab at thee. For hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee. However, for the purposes of this podcast, Montalban will be back as Armando in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. I unfortunately was unable to find any names of the real apes appearing in this film. And if anyone knows, then mail them to us.
I don't think the gorilla was real, Mark.
No, okay.
I don't.
There were other
other
apes.
I don't think Heloise was real either.
Well, you gotta have some convincing.
That gorilla
features.
wasn't real? Are you kidding me? Hey, there's a baby. Okay, the baby didn't say mama, but that was still an ape.
Right.
maybe that should have been a person.
Mark, is that the end of your trip?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Then I will fill in with the tale of this real quick. With the genius of Dr. Milo having repaired the spacecraft from the first movie, Zira and Cornelius escape the destruction of Earth in 3955 and end up on some alternate world of 1971. They are taken to a zoo, and Dr. Milo is murdered by a gorilla. Zira and Cornelius speak up and become media sensations in the human world. But Dr. Otto Haslein is wary of the apes, even when President William Wyndham wants to be cool, and there goes a pop-up in front of my summary. Even when President William Wyndham wants to be cool with the apes. But when Zira admits to having dissected humans in the ape city, and Cornelius straight up kills a dude, the apes are on the run in the human world. Zira gives birth to a baby chimp and switches it out in the circus for deception purposes. Zira and Cornelius try to wait things out on an abandoned ship, but Haslein tracks them down and everyone gets fatally gunshot. Cut to baby Milo hanging out in the circus. That's my plot. I'm sticking by it, except for when the pop-up. I've never had that happen before. I'm sitting there reading the plot and then I get a, news flash in my face. That was really annoying.
Well, you
Mm,
handled it quite well, sir.
yeah, thanks.
Stuck
I
film
never would have
handling.
known. Never would have known if you hadn't have gone into it.
There is, I, I love Jerry Goldsmith, but both this and The Omen does have music that I'm like, really? That doesn't quite sit with me. So I did find it interesting that you were equating it right on with the first movie, where I'm like, it's not the
Oh,
first movie. I just thought it was interesting to
I,
have
It,
this.
it it's sort of a nascent disco 70s pop version of the first film,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
modernized.
yeah. There's a little bit of threads from the first, so that's
Yeah,
kind of cool how he did it.
contemporary ofied. It was cool, man. I really dug it, and just the absurdity of the apes coming out of the Liberty One, which I'm guessing it was Liberty One,
I
was
was
pretty
looking
cool, man.
through, and it looks like the Wrecking Crew is actually playing that stuff. LA's Wrecking Crew. We got Bob
oh yeah,
Dane, Al
that makes sense.
Hendrickson, Carol Kay, who are all playing on the soundtrack. So, it does have its cred, but I guess it's just because
It's
I used to do all the educational industrial films from the 70s, so I'm just hearing that music too much.
it's not as it's objectively not as groundbreaking as the music from the first movie, but for my personal taste, I love it very much. That is we went into that Space 1999, how I like the music from the second season of that, and a lot of people do not.
Right.
So, personal taste.
And I do love, when you get into later in the film, when, I think the notes I put is like Apes on the Run, the scoring for that portion of it, which was sort of amped up the original, or the part of the music at the first part of the film. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
it is quite fantastic, but
Hmm.
like when we did the Omen, there were a few like at the beginning of the Omen, I think the idea was to give it like this more like happy tone before we get, disturbing and creepy chanting and stuff. So, and I didn't like
Yeah.
that as much as the rest of the Omen score. So, I'm just breaking
Can,
down Goldsmith too much here.
can
I
I
like sorry, go ahead, Mike.
can I ask a question about the about your trivia? Because I
Hmm?
saw that same note about Dr. Hassline being mentioned in Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Do you remember how that was mentioned, since you guys just covered those films? Did that pop out at you at all? Because I did a quick
No.
search and couldn't find anything. Now I got to
I,
go back and watch those two
No.
movies again.
I want to
I've
say
seen that.
Heston in the spaceship was talking about, well, Hassline's theory suggests that we'd be here by now. I think it's
Yes.
Yeah.
explaining the time dilation sort of thing.
Right.
It
And then I think Franciscus in the second movie was like, Hassline was right, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Most likely, I just know that I saw that tidbit in multiple places, so I assumed it was correct, and nobody was just putting fake stuff on IMDb trivia, which, I am very susceptible to being fooled by
Yeah.
fake trivia on IMDb, which I hope there isn't very much of.
No,
Uh,
I'm convinced either that, or Matt just placed that memory in my head, which good job for you, sir, if you did. But I think it was a conversation on Liberty One, pre I was going to say incarceration. That's not the right word. Pre freezing, cryo freeze or whatever, before that. And then I think Franciscus and Heston had that same talk in Beneath.
Yeah. I didn't do the math myself, just to be clear. So, but now that I
yeah,
think back,
But
like wow.
interesting explanation of time travel with the painter, and then painting himself, and then painting himself, and then painting himself. And I thought that was an interesting
yeah.
idea of infinite regression.
Yeah, I never really caught on that on previous views of the movie. And of course, as a kid, it's just the first two is just like normal relativity is doing it. So,
Mhm.
um,
Well, he he reminds me of I can't remember. Oh, Dr. Brian Oblivion from Videodrome in this, actually, where like it sort of is a Cronenberg thing to have a kind of a weird guy on TV explaining things that are kind of weird, that you wouldn't necessarily have someone explaining these things on TV, because that's like conceptually very difficult for a layperson to understand, even now. So I did appreciate the trippiness of that whole segment.
yeah, I wrote what did I write in there? No, I guess I didn't write it, but I was thinking, man, this doesn't seem like, big rating TV, but maybe people had longer attention spans in 1971.
But for the purposes of the film, what is it doing? It's introducing us to this character, and he's kind of like weirdly dead-eyed and monotonously explaining very strange concepts in a way where he doesn't seem to really, where he seems very detached about it, which is fascinating. And that does lend us a lot of information about his character, which is that he's kind of a brilliant psychopath.
Yeah.
I would have been, yeah, I would have been more interested in an explanation how a module with, no rocket, no booster, got launched. But hey,
Slingshot, slingshot.
I mean, I mean, we, I'm sure that someone's much smarter than me could explain this much better. But I think you need way more energy to travel to the past than to the future. I think that is.
Well,
yeah, yeah. So the whole dilation thing only works going forward. So I don't know that anybody's come up with
Uh,
any kind of decent theory on going backwards. But whatever, man. It's all a
well,
metaphor. I'm okay with it.
just to come across as a
wormhole.
maybe making myself sound dumb, but yeah, I was like, how do I go to the past? That doesn't make sense. It makes sense to go to the future, but I think that's what the infinite regression explanation's for. So when I wrote my summary, I wrote, they escape the destruction of Earth in 3955 and end up on some alternate world of 1971. This is like not the same Earth, is what I picked up from that.
I, it
Could
it
be.
kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, man. I also like the way that he explained, or he hypothesized, that a galactic or planetary disaster is what caused them to go back in time.
Right, right. Well, you
Yeah.
choose your words carefully, unless you're
Yeah.
Zero, who does not choose her words carefully.
If this was Star Trek, like we would probably get something like the explosion of Earth propelled their ship to where it needed to go. I think.
That's what I
Which,
thought, but I just that infinite regress thing really stuck in my mind. I guess watching this in 2024, we've now seen so many like multiverse things. Now it's like, oh, okay, this is an alternate Earth. That makes sense. Whereas
mhm.
watching this in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, that didn't really come through, I think. So it's almost like they
Hmm.
did put that in the movie, but it took 50 years for it to, register with most people.
Multiverse stuff works much better when you have two or less universes, maybe three.
Well, that's what this one has then, so it works.
Yeah, yeah.
Because light spoilers, Cornelius explains the history of how apes come to power, right? And he
Hmm.
said in this century this happened, in the next century this happened. The next movie that's going to get boiled down to decades. So either he was using
Hmm.
the wrong word or
Oh,
things are different this time.
Or I think they've affected change that wasn't going to happen
They
quite
made
yet,
it happen
and they've
faster now,
accelerated that
right?
thing.
By
Yes.
seeding a smart ape. They've seeded the faster
mhm.
change, I guess you could say. But yeah, the main
Well,
point being it is like kind of an alternate that from what we saw in the first two movies.
Well, if it was an alternate when they got there, it's going to be from this point forward.
yeah, and then it's alternate again when James Franco runs the lab in
Right.
a few decades. But yeah, yeah, the basically this film was crafted as open-ended to allow for a sequel, and this is the only one of the original five films, so it was designed like that.
Even
Um,
though we still kill our leads at the end.
yeah, but that ending. But still, what Cornelius explains happens is unfilmable. I could see them doing like Pierre Boull's original idea of humans getting more and more lazy and just not getting off the couch over time much better than piles of burning cats and dogs. That will never be a big budget film. That never. Not not then, not now.
Well,
So
Conquest just starts saying it already happened.
yeah, well
So
that's a way to do it. But you cannot do that like dog. You cannot do a dog and cat plague for your film. It's just,
All I was thinking was they're eating the cats, they're eating the
yeah,
dogs.
yeah, yeah. That's the new timeline. Is they start by eating the cats and the dogs.
right. Um, let's see. I'm just having a squid through my notes.
And I'm not saying I want to see that. I really don't. Um, and I'm curious. I haven't seen the fourth or fifth movies at all. Not a second of them. So
Oh, yeah, you're gonna love them.
I'm sure I
I,
will.
I think this is the best of the sequels, but I think 3, 4, and 5 are definitely its own trilogy.
Yeah, and I did think the timeline felt a little rushed in the reboot, but it does work because you get to see apes just go crazy when at the beginning of the film they're just sorry, spoilers for the 2011 movie, I think it was. Where it's like you start off with everything's normal and at the end it's like a gorilla smashing a bridge and yelling. So you know.
Yeah, that's a fun arc to have. I do want to talk about Zira's character in this one a little bit because she
Hmm.
seems, I don't know if it's just a different setting, but she seems more rash and weird in this movie, which Kim Hunter's great in it. So and she's like, "Oh, I like the script better than Beneath," which I guess she because she didn't have much to do in Beneath, but I was sitting there. I guess I'm just wondering how any of us would react when thrown in this situation because I guess Heston's pretty brash, more brash in the Ape City than he is on the ship, at least.
I I agree that this is a better script than Beneath. I think Beneath has cool stuff in it, but there's a lot of just disjointedness where this is a tight story. You know, everything makes sense that happens, and it's just, there's no like, why. I guess the most disjointed thing about this film is that they talk about how there was an ape war in the last movie, and then they're like, but apes don't kill apes, but it was the ape war. They like completely sidestep talking. I guess they're not supposed to know about the humans and the bomb and the psychic stuff.
Yeah, they would
Um,
know about that. And it's weird to say ape war. I guess it's a
But
military expedition, technically, is a
yeah,
war.
it
So
was the apes going into the forbidden zone. I think that was sort
yeah.
of the public knowledge to, do what they got to do. I do think that if you didn't realize that Zero was more brash, they spelled that out for you right away by describing the female as being uppity. So, uppity females, am I right?
Well,
that wouldn't play
that
so well in 2024, I guess.
Yeah, it didn't. But she was, man, what was it, Bay Area Women's Club? Is that where must have made it up to the Bay Area sometimes. I thought this whole film took place in Southern California, but at some point she was at the Bay Area Women's Club, giving her progressive, very, well thought out, women's lib speech to the Women's Council.
I guess that's what you were saying, like in the trivia that Pierre Boulez was adding that sort of stuff. That felt like that sort of thing, you know?
I would
With
think so. Yeah. Um, I mean, she did talk. Kim Hunter did talk about how like the ape players felt a little bit alienated because they were on this film. They were the only ones who were wearing ape makeup, and I heard similar things about the previous couple of movies where it was a weird thing where the different types of apes did end up kind of hanging out. Like the gorillas ended up hanging out together. Like it was that. It's
well, I
not like
just
that's the only time I've heard that in movies, but that definitely is a
see in the
thing.
first one, I just assumed the entire cast hated Heston because they're sweating bullets in these monkey suits, and Heston's running around in his skivvies, you know?
Yeah.
In the California
Huh?
desert heat.
Yeah, I mean there are plenty of instances of this happening on films where people end up in like cliques depending on what their character is or what their costume is or what their makeup is. But it's I think there definitely was some kind of I think their performances are a little bit more aggressive in this, which works really well because they are pretty much just, I guess she did do the thing where she almost said dissect, which was
Dissect,
kind of
dissect, dissect,
dissect,
dissect,
dissect,
dissect.
dissect.
I
Yeah, man,
thought, wait, I thought they explained that as being a hiccup.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well,
okay.
it's a brilliant. That was a brilliant little like what do you call it? Tied in a bow, like a brilliant callback where that's played kind of like a joke, and then they're like, "Nah, we're gonna hunt you down and murder you."
Yeah, and
Um,
man, just the way she was and her wanting to talk and her sort of having that glint in her eye of I have a secret when they were testing her and trying to show how smart she was without speaking, and then finally she just couldn't take it anymore. And just the chemistry I thought between her and Roddy McDowell was fantastic. And it was silly stuff that doesn't date well, like does the male speak only when she lets me? But then they laughed and they hugged each other because of that. Like it was just such playful banter. I thought they were great together.
Yeah, Roddy McDowell seems to be making up for lost time having not been in the last movie.
yeah, it really makes the other guy seem not great by comparison.
Well, they just kind of shut Cornelius into the background and kind of mumbled three lines in the last movie, because they
Yeah.
intentionally did not push him forward. I was wondering how different this is from the Secret of the Planet of the Apes script, though, because I mean that's the central plot of this movie, so the title would still make sense in this one. And isn't Dr. Milo basically the Leonardo da Vinci type? I mean, he's still here. He just gets off real quick.
I think that's a different character from the. I couldn't find a whole lot. You know how these things are. It's like there's tons of documentation about the first iteration of anything, and then the sequels. There's less and less and less information. But I think that was a different character because he
Okay.
doesn't seem like the most.
We
Doesn't
could
seem
be
like
the
a.
engineer. He could be the guy that tossed the probe. He tossed the probe into space himself because he's a special ape. I don't know, since they didn't have boosters.
Yes, special ape.
Yeah, and then I just think of I didn't realize how young Salminio was when we lost him, and sort of
Yeah.
how the corner that he must have been backed into as a career to take this role to try to revive it. I mean, Heston starred in the role. Like obviously that was
Mhm.
a vehicle that put him front and center, but I think most
Yeah.
people that maybe had seen Rebel Without a Cause and some other films probably didn't even realize that was Sal Mineo if they didn't show the credits. And by the way, I love credits at the beginning of a movie, not at the end. But
Yeah.
but hard to recognize, not in the film a whole lot. And I just don't see how that would be a viable opportunity to revive one's career.
This is
No,
his
Although,
last motion picture role. He
he
did some
did
TV
not.
after this, but
It was documented that he was claustrophobic and did not like the makeup, and apparently Roddy McDowall had to give him many hugs to calm him down, which is
right.
sweet. But I don't know if that had anything to do with him being killed off early, but it might have.
mm-mm.
He
Yeah.
might have gotten it kicked up a little bit. And yeah, I don't think this would have, even if he was just in the entire movie, like this didn't do a whole lot for anybody's career. I don't think it didn't
Right.
move the needle a whole lot. But
As far as Cornelius goes, though, like we talked about him and Zero, but he was keeping everything so tightly lipped, that ask him a question, be like, "Oh, who can say? It was so long ago. It's only stuff of legend," and then go on later to tell you exactly what happened.
yeah, well, it's the classic. I don't want to tell you things that you shouldn't that you shouldn't want to know. He's the Dr. Zaius in this situation.
Yeah.
Well, he's much better at finessing in this situation, and except when he gets called a monkey or his wife gets called a monkey.
Yeah.
It's like Chicken in
Uh,
Back to the Future.
So,
Yeah.
so I noticed, they go through their honeymoon period, right? They're brought in front of the commission. They say their stuff. They make their jokes. They're beloved by the people, and then we get into that montage of them getting fitted for clothes, and they get to the hotel with, all the gift bags. How long? And you guys are much more, students of film than I am. When did the trope of everything goes south after the montage begin? I remember it in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Does it go back further than that?
I want to say Bonnie and Clyde maybe does that.
That
Uh,
feels like a tale as old as time.
Song as old as rhyme?
Yes.
but I don't see like 40s movies doing that so much. Maybe it's harder to make a montage. I don't know. So it could be a new Hollywood thing because we're thinking Butch Cassidy, Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, this is a new Hollywood, but it's 8 years down the pike, so it starts to find itself in the mainstream by this point.
Yeah, just like as soon as you see a montage, man, it's like, oh God, it's coming. I don't know what's coming.
Montage.
Something there are a number of interesting lines that have a lot of meaning in this film, but towards the very end, Zira says something to the effect of, "I've met about 100 humans and I trust 3." You guys feel like maybe she would trust more people if it hadn't been for that whole celebrity thing? Because I do feel like there have to be more people she could trust than just the 3 humans who were, the scientists.
Yeah, but if you're
I
walking talking ape in 1971, I think you're going to
Yeah.
be in a lab or you're going to be a celebrity. Those are kind of like the two routes.
yeah.
I
So
suppose.
yeah, and they met hundreds, but how many did they get to know? So she obviously trusted, I think it was Taylor, Stevie, and Dixon.
Yeah.
Um, and of the hundreds that they met, I don't think they had a chance to know many. They also met Hassline and some others that were not trustworthy. So, really of the ones they met, they might have been batting more like close to 500, and not
Yeah.
3%.
Yeah, they should not trust Hassline
Well, no,
since he was,
I feel like the most
murdered. They're to murder them.
So you didn't trust Hassline when he said, "I've been trusted with the baby's safekeeping. Give her to me." You didn't.
Yeah.
You were getting like shady
No.
vibes from that. Because I was like, yeah, no, just hand the
No.
baby over. They'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah. No, I thought the seediest thing was when he's like, oh, you're pregnant. Here's a bottle of wine, and I'm going to start smoking.
Because it was funny because he gave her the grape juice plus, right? And he was like, because that's the thing. Even X said it's good for a woman in your condition. But then he pulls out that awesome cigarette case tape recorder that I desperately have to have at this point, and goes to light a cigarette, and then he's like, "No, you shouldn't smoke."
Yeah.
But just the 1-2 punch of have some wine and pulling out that case. I was like, oh, he's really laying this on thick, isn't he? As a scumbag.
Is that sort of do you think that's sort of a period thing, or for that where it felt really weird that Zira kind of fainted and was like, "Oh, I'm pregnant," and then also
I'm so glad you brought that up, because Stevie fainted when Zira said, "I loathe bananas." And I remember being like 5 or 6 years old watching this on TV and saying she loves bananas, and my mom like, no, loathe, like that's a word that means you hate. I'm like, wow, because that really sounds a lot like a word that makes it sound like you love something. Having said that, Stevie faints. So I look at my wife and I said, "Oh, when you were a girl, when you were a child, did you think that fainting would be a much bigger problem for women when you grew up?" And she was like, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought women fainted all the time.
I have seen probably 8 different people have seizures and never seen anybody faint.
It's just how things come on when you're a kid. I think I might have said here before, but when my dad was 10, he got hit by a car, and until I was 18, I thought all of us got hit by a car at some point in our lives.
Yeah, you try to make it normal.
I certainly thought that by now I would have seen quicksand and would have seen somebody interrupt a marriage or interrupt a wedding. I've never even heard of anybody interrupting a wedding.
100% on the quicksand thing. John Mulaney has a great bit on that.
Yeah, it's seen it in a number of movies for podcasts, but still haven't seen it in real life.
I've been in a muddy lake with no water. That was a little bit like quicksand.
That'd be tricky.
Yeah.
I want to go back and watch this movie just to find and source all of the outfits that Cornelius wore as a human. That robe, that bathrobe was fantastic.
Yeah.
That yellow turtleneck with the sport coat, fantastic as well.
Well, the Apes got some taste, I guess, for mid early 70s fashions.
Yeah, it's a swinging movie. I don't know how else to put it. It's just swinging. It swings.
It really is. And I think when you guys brought up before the conversation between Hassline and the president, man, what a great conversation. Who's to say if the progeny, isn't going to do better than the parents? I loved his just very sort of reserved, well, as long as they don't take over by, I doubt we'll be in office when this happens. I thought that was fun. And I loved the line where he said, I consider it dispassionately as a possibility, not hysterically as a certainty. I thought that was just such a nice measured response.
Something that did take it out of because it's kind of had the sci-fi, sort of the Trek discussion, except there's so much God in there, that much God in the high level discussion would not happen on those shows, but then I was like, well, that probably did happen in the White House. We've had a few presidents that, didn't Sonny Bush think the apocalypse was going to happen within his lifetime or something?
I think a lot of folks do. And I do think, I don't know if it's a pop culture thing or if how things like really and truly were at the time, but it seems like the whole, I think there was a lot more secular ways of thinking, say pre 1980. Like even in something like It's a Wonderful Life, when Clarence tells that guy who was working the drawbridge or whatever, and that little shack, that he was an angel, and the guy couldn't believe it. I think at this point in time, there's a different attitude towards religion, and that you're not crazy or out of your mind if you believe in such things. Where even then, it was
Well, here,
taken with, you must be crazy.
here we did the Omen several weeks ago, and we were sitting there like, is this kind of where the key starts to turn into like weird, fundamentalism? Because that popularized the apocalypse, 666, the son of the devil, all that sort of stuff. Maybe wasn't such a big thing before the Omen. Did we come to that conclusion, sort of? Mark, you can
I don't know if
confirm or
we
deny.
could. I don't know if we came to a conclusion about it. We definitely discussed the possibility that and the Exorcist are
Yeah, yeah.
widely considered sort of, the basis of the Satanic Panic, which led to like a lot of social, I don't know, bad social things. I don't know how else to put it. The war on drugs, which destroyed, thousands and thousands and thousands of people's lives. Dungeons and Dragons, you know, I guess Dungeons and Dragons made it through, but there a lot of things would be better if it wasn't for the Satanic Panic. It's impossible to even measure. But yeah, that's that. Yeah, there was a pushback there, and some amount of like shared madness.
Hmm.
I agree. And, if I may, we chatted with David A. Goodman, who's one of the executive producers from the Orville, on our show recently, because he's co-show running Hysteria on Peacock, which is
No.
about a 1980s garage band that gets caught up in the Satanic Panic. And I thought at that point hilarity would ensue. That show gets really dark really quick, and it's awesome.
Oh, cool. I'll check that out.
And who
Because
stars in that? Someone notable is I remember.
Julie Bowen is probably the biggest star in it. The kids are fairly unknown. Um, Bruce Campbell, who
That's who
I would
I'm
watch
thinking
Oh,
of.
Bruce
Okay,
Campbell
yeah, he's the
read the
sheriff or
phone
something,
book.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. I
yeah,
knew there was some.
fantastic.
Yeah, because
hmm.
excuse me. I wanted to. Oh yeah, I thought it was interesting in 1971 having Dr. Hessline like just weaponize a pronoun, which you wouldn't think of seeing in a 1971 movie. He says, "Take the female ape back to its quarters," and I was like, okay.
Hmm. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's there's a lot of weaponization of words here.
Hmm.
Right, right, but
And it
that's
is
just
very
such a
fascinating.
modern one we hear about, and seeing it 50 years
Hmm.
back, I was like, oh, that actually stuck out a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you guys think Cornelius's reaction to the orderly was appropriate, over the top? I mean, obviously he didn't mean to kill him, but
No, that's the definition of manslaughter, and he is guilty of manslaughter having done that, or ape slaughter if you
yeah.
want. But yeah,
Now, my wife said that he was there to poison them. And I said, or to
Mm.
drug them. And I said, I didn't think
that
that
wasn't
was the
clear to be
case.
sure. Yeah, they didn't make
Certainly
that clear.
wasn't. Yeah. And I think after that, Dixon was like, I should tell them. So it was like they were just kind of getting the plan in place, I think, at that, as to what they were going to do next. But yeah, she was like, no, he was clearly there to poison them. I was like, I thought he was being nice. He was like, hey, you need proteins for the little one. You're eating for two. Hey, got a little monkey in there. Oh God, I said it.
Yeah, again, that's why it's making
Yeah.
me think of the Michael J. Fox or the Marty McFly, chicken reaction. It's like that's about, and he
That
didn't he didn't kill anyone in that case, at least.
Yeah.
that chicken thing is my least favorite thing of that entire trilogy. It feels so tacked on. It doesn't feel like Marty McFly. It doesn't feel like it fits with his character at all. It just feels like the movie tacked something on to make Marty do things.
Yeah,
And
but if
honestly,
if
this
if he
this
didn't have
murder,
that, you
yeah, this
wouldn't get the Back to
manslaughter.
the Future 2 thing where Griff's one of his cronies pulls the thing and the little chicken comes out going bark bark bark. That makes it worth it for me, by the way.
Sure. Sure, there's nothing that's fun. But this also feels like a little bit tacked on, just in that it really doesn't look like he would have died from that. It really it's sort of like, well, the thing where the movie just kind of shoves something in there to escalate everything. But even though also the thing where he flips the tray does look kind of wacky at the time, and I was kind of like giggled a little bit,
Right,
and
because they
then it's
leave
like,
and then they're like, is
oh,
that
it's murder.
blood?
Yeah.
Yeah, Well,
I mean, that's
it's
again definition of manslaughter, I guess. He didn't
Right.
mean to kill
yeah.
him at all, but he definitely killed him.
I can't
Can
think of a
we
good way they would have put a murder in there, accidental killing in there. So I guess
yeah.
the tray is good enough.
Can we talk a little bit about just how awesome Ricardo Montalban was in this film?
Of course.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
just from the "you want me to do what? Of course I will." And then the funniest, I never, I've seen this film my entire life. I never, ever, ever caught this line before, and I could not stop laughing. The first chimpanzee, only the fourth chimpanzee? No, the first chimpanzee to be born in a circus. Oh, come on. The Los Angeles Zoo has had four. Los Angeles is a zoo. This is a circus. And then Dixon says, that's the same thing a lot of New Yorkers say.
Yeah.
At the same,
Yeah,
I still
he's
don't, I
great.
still don't trust this claim there. That still sounds wrong.
Yeah, but the kind of character that he is, that just very, very boisterous, very outgoing, very gregarious. He's probably going to be a braggadocio. He's going to make those claims, and it just sort of adds to the bigger than life circus man that he is. I thought it was perfect.
It feels almost like a character that Montalban sat down and wrote a backstory for, before they film, which is
Probably the
brilliant.
case.
He's just a brilliant actor, and yeah, he did an incredible
I mean,
job
I think
for.
that's what
He was
most
on there for
actors
like
do.
3 minutes.
Yeah,
I
even
mean,
if it's a
yeah,
smaller part, you at least you build, you have to know your motivation so you can construct your own backstory if need be.
yeah.
Um, this is we're getting near the climax of the movie, I guess, as we're chatting through it, and I did think Zira just like ditching her bag was a little weird, especially since that's like clear evidence. I thought she was smarter than that, or I guess she was,
I mean,
Gregors or whatever, but.
I thought she was smarter than to say dissect.
That makes a little more sense though, because think
I
about
don't know.
podcasting, how often you just spit out something. Oh, I didn't want to say that.
Oh, I didn't dissect any listeners. I mean, I did.
Discuss with
Did
any.
wait, what?
Yeah, leaving the bag was curious, and they made such a big deal of knowing exactly what the bag is. They show it, she holds it, and then she says, "Is that your bag?" And she's like, "Of course it's mine." In the hotel, I thought that was fun also. And then when she left it, I thought, maybe before you do that, see if Cornelius can lighten the load for a little bit and carry something. But yeah, that was the
Maybe that's
trail
too much
that
of a
was
plot
needed.
device. Because when they're
Well,
escaping Camp 11, I'm like, why is she taking it with her now? Right? It doesn't make sense. And
I was wondering about that too. So did they have so if their civilian clothes were packed in that bag for the travel, what did they travel with? Maybe just some oranges or something like that. But were the astronaut clothes then back in the bag? Because you know what I mean? Like they had their civilian clothes on. What's in the bag?
bananas. No.
Come on,
not
man. She
bananas.
loathes bananas.
She loves, actually, Kim Hunter loves bananas. That's
Yeah.
that was the origin of that. But
Yep.
it is interesting to me. Like we could spend a lot of time comparing. This is a good direct comparison with the first film. How Taylor is a very loud person in general, and he does a pretty good job of being quiet for a stretch of the first film. And I don't think he really says a whole lot that really gets him into trouble. Where Zira is smarter than Taylor. I mean, it's just obviously, but still kind of messes up a little bit. But also, I mean, what kind of a film would the first film be if Taylor was specifically a guy who experimented on apes? Because that's
Well,
sort
I
of the
guess that's what the newer
situation.
movies get to, right?
That's sort of what the situation is, right? Like it's like you experiment on humans, and then suddenly you're in a more advanced society than your own, full of humans.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
that if the coincidence was that, it was the scientist astronaut happened to be also one that had a background in animal testing on apes, it would add another level of complexity to it. I am glad they spoke as much as they did in the film about animal testing and, is it right? Is it wrong? We do it. We're judging them for doing it. We do the same thing. I thought that was a conversation and an awareness that I'm glad this film brought up.
yeah, that's it's it's great that it wasn't an exact mirror because they sort of, I guess they could have done, if they did an exact mirror of the first film, it would be okay. They go back in time to whatever prehistoric Earth, and they're dealing with prehistoric humans or something like that, or maybe
That
I
would have
don't.
made a much bigger budget as well. So
Actually, that would have been pretty fun. What if they just went back to like the days of Jesus and they met Jesus and they did that. They participated in all that stuff. You could write a lot of movies like that.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It, um,
You should do the
another
time machine.
Another line that was one of my favorites is when they're hiding out in that oil rig, and Zira says, "Is this what man wanted oil for? To kill fish?"
Great line. I got that right in my notes right here too.
Yeah, it gave me chills. Like
Yeah.
that's
It
incredible.
doesn't smell like humans. That's oil and fish. Is that what man wanted oil for? To kill fish? Oh my God, so
Yeah.
good.
How many fish we've killed since then, too.
Question for you guys. Does Cornelius get the concept of hiding out on a derelict ship? Because he's just walking those decks, man. Like he's just walking those decks, and then Zira has to feed the baby, which I'm not really sure how that was going to work, but she was going to feed the baby, and he says, "Oh, there's got to be someplace cleaner than this." I don't care if there's a place cleaner than this. There's four walls, and we're hidden right now. Stay there. That's the place you want to feed the baby.
Yeah, that's a little more of the movie progressing because it needs to progress. I think it is sort
Yeah.
of.
I
I
guess
don't
that's
want
the
to say it fell
interesting thing about
apart.
this movie. There's all these weird little plot devices that are shoehorned in, yet you get all these really intelligent conversations, like that's smarter than the average sci-fi flick, but then the plot
Yeah.
machinations are a little, they don't ruin the movie at all, but yeah, we are sitting here like that really doesn't make sense, does
No,
it?
no. I mean, he's a scientist. He should be smarter than that. Do you think she Zira threw the baby in the water to hide its identity somehow?
That's what I assumed
Yeah.
because she's the only one. Does Cornelius even know there was a switch?
I don't think he did.
I thought that the baby had gotten shot, and that's why she threw the baby in the water. It was just like,
But still, they might find it, and I guess physiologically, they might run a DNA test or something.
well, I mean,
Can
it's
you
not the
DNA
same
test on a
baby.
71? Yeah, right. That's my point.
No, you
She
cannot
wants
run a DNA test 71.
no.
No.
She does not want to discover that is not the actual offspring. So throw in the
And
water. It's already dead. So
you might, you might assume that people would not murder the baby because the baby didn't experiment on anybody. They could, it could be like Hellboy. They raise the baby to be the good American ape
Hmm.
who fights for America.
well, we'll get back with the baby in the next movie, of course. So
Yeah, I gotta say the worst effect in the film is the loop of the ape saying "mama" at the end. Going backwards and
I wouldn't have
forwards.
been happy. And again, they had the budget and the time constraints they had, but the big bag of Cornelius landing on the deck and the looping baby saying "mama," I wouldn't have not. Excuse me, I would not have been happy with those had it been
Oh,
something I
you should have
was
had my
putting my
viewing
name on.
experience because the sound mysteriously cut out in the last minute. So I didn't hear that. And Ricardo's last few lines I only got in subtitle.
Oh man, they were so commanding. So yeah,
I've seen it
so
before.
good.
But
Yeah.
on this podcast in general, we do like to look at the amount of existential dread. We found it quite a bit, especially
Oh.
in the last movie. This one I don't think has that much existential dread. It has a lot of intrigue, but
It
uh
depends on how much you're really thinking about the whatever the possible future and about the couple of Cornelius and Zira who you've grown to love over the last 1 1/8 movie.
yeah, but it's kind of like more like a spy craft thing. I mean, not that they're spies or anything,
Yeah.
but it's just more that vibe. I think that, and maybe I just got all my dread out in the last two movies. So now you're like, yeah, the world ends, whatever.
Yeah.
We saw that, been there, done that.
Well, there's a lot of dread in the last 20 minutes or so.
Mm.
So
Because
there is. I'm sorry.
oh god,
The existential dread for going forward. I think of having their best option being going to the Everglades and live. Ricardo Montalban said, "Live out the rest of your lives as one happy family." Uh, Dixon took it a step further and said, "You can start your own ape colony." If you're okay with a certain amount of incest in said ape colony, I guess, but
Yeah, they're not going to find other apes in the Everglades.
I would love to see a film where they have different partners and then some of the apes are like half intelligent.
Isn't that what
I don't know what that would
the
be.
latter day ones do, kind of?
Uh, yeah, the latter day ones definitely have apes in the beginning stages of being smart, and then in the more recent, the most recent one, the apes are still kind of, mostly articulate, but kind of not entirely articulate,
Right.
but in a fun way.
Hmm.
Because you saw that one, right?
No,
Kingdom.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh,
Yeah, I'll get
there's
to
a
it someday.
very, I've said this 100 times on other podcasts, but there's a very fun guerrilla leader guy who's sort of like a like a sleazy cult leader,
Hmm.
sort of. And
Mhm.
he's just Mike, have you seen that?
I have. Yeah, I went to see it
Yeah.
specifically. Well, my son and I have been seeing these all the way back to the James Franco reboot at that point. So
Yeah.
it's sort of a semi-annual, every couple of years we do it. But I thought Peter Macon's
Cool.
character was phenomenal.
Yeah.
He was kind of the orangutan Yoda-esque uh,
Oh
character.
yes, yes. I'm not great with actor names sometimes. Also, I think there were a lot
Mhm.
of unknowns in that film, but yeah, there were a lot of amazing performances in that. But yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine. We agreed that we wanted the gorilla the Gorilla King to just keep going and have like a redemption arc.
Oh, that'd be great.
We wanted him, yeah.
Uh,
We wanted,
I really did like the line in that where Peter Macon said, and the female was named Nova. They are all
yeah.
named Nova. We do not know why.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great reference to like callbacks that happen for no reason. It's like hell yeah. Uh,
Now, our other question around these parts these days is giving these movies bananas. You can give the movie up to 7 bananas. You can decide what that means yourself. But Mike, how bananas is Escape from the Planet of the Apes?
Well, I would say that, just as a frame of reference, if I were to give The Planet of the Apes, 1968 original with Charlton Heston, 7 bananas, I would give this movie 5 bananas.
Mark, how about for you?
I'm giving this 6. It's a substantial meal of made of bananas, and it's a filling amount of bananas. It's not quite 7 bananas. These are different bananas than the other two movies to me. I think these are like the when you get the big organic bananas.
Mm.
They're
No,
healthy
I'm
bananas.
only giving this one 3 bananas because we only have
Hmm.
3 apes in it. Keep in mind, this isn't
Hater.
a quality thing. I like the movie, but it only gets three
Yeah.
bananas. We're getting mostly, like early 70s imagery. It's like like any standard comedy or drama at the time, just with a couple apes in it, which is a little bananas. It gets the three. And I don't want to give it so many bananas because zero loves bananas.
Yeah. That's solely. I'm never very good at answering these questions, and I'm always just hand waving and saying vague things. But
That's the fun.
yeah, yeah, there's something that it feels substantial about this, so I'm giving it. I believe I gave Beneath 5 and the original 7, and I think this is 6. Yep.
Yes. No,
That
that's fine.
tracks.
That-
Yeah.
That's what you can do. Any final thoughts that you guys want to throw out on Escape? Escape, ape, apes. I'm trying to say it like I want with the big A again.
Well,
Man,
gotta love a fish out of water movie, and this is an ape out of water movie.
Hmm. Literally.
Yep.
I'll just go down and talk about, subjugation, slavery, the importance of unity, uh, overpopulation, the threat of nuclear war, pollution, animal testing. Just all of these things were brought up. The legitimacy of suicide. The line that said, if I take somebody out that's evil, am I God's enemy or God's instrument? And the president said, well, the assassin would consider himself the latter. I mean, that's just a phenomenal role. What can you do? Was it is it morally okay to try to they condoned the assassination attempt of Adolf Hitler, but what about when he was a child? What about his parents? What about his ancestors? Would that be okay? Just I think just a phenomenal amount of social dialogue in this movie, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I guess that's where some of those new Hollywood strains come in because new Hollywood wants to throw in those, kind of thicker issues. And the Planet of the Apes movies is maybe one of the first times some really popular entertainment kind of aimed at kids really bakes it in, you know?
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that in 1971, when this movie came out, people said they were tired of having this stuff rammed down their throat and they just wanted to be entertained.
Yep.
The
And then Star Wars came out, and they were like, "This is what I'm talking about." Now, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Star Wars doesn't have commentary, and it has plenty of stuff in it. But this is what I like. I want thoughtful sci-fi that does not have to move at an insane pace.
No, I
Um,
was definitely noting how quiet the climax is. I was like, such a quiet climax to a movie. Oh, the helicopters are here. They make it louder. But the first part, I'm like, there's like 5 minutes left of this movie, and it's this real quiet, like cat and mouse scene.
I mean, I
And
love a good like chase through an old oil rig. There's a lot of movies that do that. Like it's just the sense of dread when someone's hiding in like some kind of insane structure that they got to film in for one day.
it painted such a haunting picture and I think a very realistic picture of what it's like to have the walls close in around you, right? We all end up at an end of an alley where we can't get rid of. We all end up in a room somewhere that, a hospital room or a hospice room that we're not going to get out of. They ended up on this rig with Hess lines shooting at them and the helicopters coming in and the Marines showing up. And it's had that sense of finality of this is it. Like we're not getting out of this. And I think that was done very well.
Yeah, and for what's such a fun movie for most of the first half of it, that's an incredible turn that feels completely earned, which is not easy to do.
This G-rated movie. It's amazing what gets a G
Yeah.
rating back in the day.
Yeah. The, what is this, the first G-rated Planet of the Apes movie without any nude humans in it?
But instead we get some blood, yeah, and murder.
Yeah,
I guess we get murder in all of them, but
you get murder.
a lot of blood
But
in the last one too. But
but
yeah, it's
yeah,
just interesting these things have G ratings because that's so bizarre from I mean, these would be PG-13s now easily.
this is a classic example of a movie that feels like it shouldn't work, but it does, and it makes a lot of the stuff it does look easy, and these things are not easy to do. And it was an absolute delight watching this all the way through for the first time.
Okay, well, for people keeping track, we will be having our conquest next time. But Mike, you want to tell folks what's up on your podcasting end?
Yeah, so part of the Mission Log family of podcasts. I'm working a little bit as part of the Roddenberry Repertory Players on genealogy. So check that out, where they look into the early works of Gene Roddenberry, pre-Star Trek, covering a series now called The Detectives, which is a lot of fun. Jessica and I are getting ready to release a 4 episode series leading up to a Master Replicas giveaway of everything Orville that they have on the shelves. So we've got Ben Robinson lined up, Andre Bormanis, and a few other guests that we'll look at to try to hype that up. Mission Log is about I'd say about close to halfway through its season 6 coverage, and I got a turn in the co-pilot seat, sitting in for Norman Lau to cover Tinker Tenor Doctor Spy, and that episode will drop December 5th. So that's what's going on there. And you can check us out on missionlogpod.com. Excuse me. I don't mean to add to your editing, but you can check us out on roddenberrypodcasts.com as well as Mission Log Pod on Facebook.
I can edit that. That's near the end. I'm not going to edit Mark's flub earlier, though. I can't find that easily.
I mean, you could.
I could. As for us and our lightly edited podcast, please rate and review podcast 1999's on all the podcatchers. Everyone here has been on Time Enough Podcast talking about the Twilight Zone. Everyone here has been on Films and Filth talking about movies rated very high or very low by IMDb users. And our central hub for all that's Podcastio is at patreon.com. Okay. Now I'm going to escape
Yeah.
from this podcast. Okay, I got the last word. Exciting.
I couldn't think of anything to say. I was gonna be like, no, you hit me with a tray. Didn't happen. Oh man.
As always,
Yeah.
this was a lot of fun. Mark, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
dude.
I feel like we both talked at the same time a few times, and I didn't at all mean to try to talk over you or anything like that. I
Oh,
apologize if it
I'm
I think
sorry
it
if
happened
I
a couple of times, and I apologize. This is your show. I shouldn't be.
No,
no,
you
no,
guys
you're
gotta
good.
know when to.
I'm sorry if I like cut you off because it's hard to do with our time zone. I think going through Japan from two different time zones makes it kind
You're
of
right.
weird.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's literally all it was. So I just didn't
yeah.
want you to think that I was just blurting in there.
I
No,
think
no,
all of
you're
us
good.
podcast enough that you just like kind of know the flow, and there's a little bump, and then you kind of ebb back, and
Mhm.
all of us kind of do that. I think like films and filth. I almost like I'm always worried about like having guests now because we all talk so much. I don't want to freeze anyone out. Like Mike, if you're there, I know you're in the conversation. But there's been a few times where we had someone on, and I was like, "Are we freezing them out?"
And I always try since I feel like I'm the most talky of anybody. I always try to be like, "What do you think, guest?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I try to,
right,
Mhm.
but
right, right. But if
mm,
we do get in weird rants. So, but
No,
yeah,
I
I mean,
definitely.
we'll get it right in a few like 5 or 6 more years.
Well, and I also feel really comfortable with you guys since I've been on here, enough that I can, you know, jump
yeah,
in.
yeah. But
Well,
yeah,
always glad to have you, man. I mean, seriously, we got great chemistry.
but
Yeah, I agree.
I don't have an Earl around here, so the editing is a little sparser.
It's very light. Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm really. So when I was on, um, Mission Log a couple of weeks ago with John, I mean, one of the things that was really intimidating about it was he moves fast. Like he's got notes for prologue, act one, act two, act three, act four, act five, and he just moves through the observations, and then the second part also. And it's like if you don't keep up, like now you're like two acts past where your last note was. It was like, can we go back? Oh God. so, so there was, definitely that. But I also tried, really hard to like keep the ums and uhs in check. And I sort of am wondering how it's going to sound because Earl spends a lot of time editing that and making sure that if there's any times where people are talking over each other, they just kind of slide the audio track one way or the other. And it'll the edited version will drop last week. So it was just kind of a really cool experience to sit in for Norman for that one. And it was, since it was an episode about the Dr. Daydreaming about getting to do stuff, I was like, yeah, I've kind of daydreamed about getting to do this. So this is kind of cool.
I wondered
Hell
how much
yeah.
the meta there slipped in. I'm gonna hit the recording button, so goodbye to all the folks that are listening to this version.